Did you know? Every day, millions of people across the world rely upon trains to get them from A to B. The morning rush hour, for example, simply wouldn't happen without trains. And trains simply wouldn't run without train tracks. Indeed, a proper rail network is often the measure of a modern society. Britain's railway system has its origins in the early 1800s, and with it came a new world. For example, suddenly it had to be the same time everywhere in the country. Previously, people would set clocks and watches by local churches, or approximate what time it might be. But in order for a national timetable to work, it has to be the same time everywhere. Famously, the British took trains and railway lines wherever they went, for example, during the British Raj in India. And though there are debates to be had as to whether those train tracks simply enabled more resources to be taken out of the country, it is also true that the railway network was a superb legacy for India. Not only in connecting different parts of the country, but today, for example, millions who otherwise might not have access to the internet benefit from major train stations being Wi-Fi hubs. Now, trains and railway networks have their origins in the Industrial Revolution, and I am lucky enough to live in the northeast of England, where trains in particular had their origins. Most people credit George Stephenson with the invention of the first fully functional steam locomotive. Stephenson's rocket was built in Newcastle upon Tyne, and in 1829 won a national competition for the best train design. Indeed, it was Stephenson and his rocket that set the so-called standard gauge. This is an internationally recognised standard width for a railway track. And so most modern railway tracks trace their origins to the rocket, though there were railway lines before Stephenson's rocket. This is an aerial photograph of the Swan Hunter shipyard in Wallsend, the town where I live. In July 2013, an archaeological discovery was made on the boundary of the Swan Hunter and Neptune shipyards. A wooden railway. These tracks were not made of iron, but wood, and were specifically for the use of horse-drawn carts, transporting coal from local coal mines to the banks of the River Tyne. What's more, these wooden tracks were standard gauge. After all, Stephenson and his company had to test their steam machines on local rail tracks. It kind of makes sense that they would build it to fit the local measurement, and then the local measurement became the international standard. Surely, therefore, these wooden tracks are the original railways. Well, perhaps not. At this point, it's worth asking the question, what is a railway track? A railway track allows you to take goods or people from one place to another on a set route from A to B. The track means you cannot leave that route. You have to follow the line. So, for example, despite the name, a camel train doesn't really qualify. All the individual camels can veer off at any moment in any direction, and the route isn't set. Having thought long and hard about the origin of trackways, there is one that comes to mind in ancient Greece. Now, of course, I'm not claiming that the ancient Greeks had steam locomotives, although they did have small-scale steam engines as toys. Rather, I am thinking of something else the Greeks were famous for: ships and sailing. Pirates and the weather often made circumnavigating the Peloponnese Peninsula a treacherous prospect. And so the Corinthians sought to take advantage of an isthmus, a narrow stretch of land separating two seas just to the north. Today, this 6-kilometre wide stretch of land has a canal passing through it, but the ancient Corinthians decided to do something else. Yes, they laid a trackway. Not a train track, but a ship track. The Diolkos was a paved trackway designed specifically to drag ships across the isthmus. Indeed, in places, grooves are visible. where it has been suggested that the ships were in fact laid upon carts for transport. This looks more and more like a railway. It certainly meets the basic criteria, transporting goods or people from one place to another on a track that cannot be deviated from. So, while the modern rail network absolutely has its origins with rail pioneers such as George Stephenson, perhaps the origins of rail travel lie in its absolute purest form, the concept of literally ferrying people and goods from place to place.